Hey everybody, I want to talk to you today. I should have started out on the announcement slide, but I want to talk to you today after a few announcements about sort of the future of infectious disease and then the topic that we've all been waiting on, zombies and zombie apocalypse. And is that possible? All right, so this lecture video is for Thursday, the 23rd. This happens to also be the day that your disease paper is due. Your extra credit, it's optional. If you decided to do that, it is due. And your clicker journal is due, all right? You can find all of these by going to our Canvas site and clicking on the assignment link. And then these three should be in the upcoming assignments. There should be a link for each one. I want to remind you guys about filling out the TN Voice course evaluations for the Biology 105 course, sort of the course as a whole, as well as really my teaching. This is really important, so I'm wanting to get a high percentage of participants, so I want you all to give me your feedback. I want 85%. Right now, we've got 39% participation. I just checked it, so that means only 39% of you have done it. So if I can get 85% of you to do this, I'm going to give everybody 3%, or excuse me, 3%, not 3%. I'm going to give everybody 3 points extra credit onto your exam 3 score. All right, the final exam, that does bring me to the final exam. I want to remind you, it was scheduled for Tuesday, April 28th. I'm going to put it onto Canvas and have it open for you all for a range of days. I'm going to open it up Monday the 27th at 8 a.m. and it's going to stay open until Thursday the 30th at 11:59 p.m. It will close at 11:59 p.m. And if you want the full time, I really do recommend that you sort of sit down no later than like 8 p.m. that night to get started. Because once you start, you'll be timed. I'm going to give you 2 hours. And this is really important for those of you that are registered for SDS that you start by 8, because some of you have, a lot of extra time. And so if you want your full time, you need to start by about 8 p.m. on the 30th to make sure you have the full time. All right, we can't seem to change slides. Let's see if this will work. All right, so what's the future of infectious disease? We know that infectious disease has always plagued mankind. If you look, there's evidence of infectious disease and writings all the way as far as we have, back in human recorded history. And then if we look even further back into that, like in the fossil records, for example, there's evidence for infectious disease that goes back millions and millions of years. So infectious disease has always plagued mankind, and it probably always will. We know that currently with bacteria, for example, there's the rise of antibiotic resistant bacteria. We're seeing the rise of antibiotic resistant bacteria where they are evolved resistance to our treatments. And so, examples of diseases like tuberculosis, which we, have felt like were under control for a number of years, are now emerging as a new concern, right? There's zoonoses. These are diseases that can, transfer or jump the species barrier and maybe make its way from, animals into humans. We know that this plays a role in the evolution of new pathogens. For example, we're experiencing one of these right now, right? This is in the case of a virus, and this COVID-19 disease that's caused by that SARS-CoV-2 virus. That is thought to be zoonoses. That's probably come from either bats. That's what some of the current research is saying. I've also seen some evidence that, some people think it maybe came back to the scaly anteaters, the pangolins. But anyway, I'm sure that will be more clear as more and more research and more evidence comes forward. But right now we do know that it's a zoonoses. All right, so we know new diseases are going to continually emerge, right? It's just the way of life and the way of evolution. But do these new diseases have anything to do with a zombie? All right, so what is a zombie? What characteristics are required for a zombie, and is there a real possibility of a zombie apocalypse? All right, so what is a zombie? Now, I know that zombie characteristics do tend to vary, but when I looked this up, and I feel like most of the sources that I've seen, especially recently, they share, like most of the zombies I've seen share these sets of characteristics. For the most part, zombies are mobile, right? They're able to move, but they're technically dead, right? So they're dead, but moving around. They don't have a heartbeat or other vital signs, but they've died and are somehow brought back to life, okay? This is generally thought to have happened by some sort of virus or some infectious agent, or magic, right? They're in a decaying or rotting state, right? So they don't look so hot, right? They are discolored skin and eyes, and they're usually bleeding, and they've got teeth that are all rotting and falling out, etc. They don't communicate by talking or speaking language that you would think of, so they're generally thought to be non-communicative. They do make lots of noise, though, right? I noticed that they groan and howl and grumble and make lots of strange noises. They're unemotional. They have no mercy towards their victims. And they are downright hungry for human flesh, right? They don't usually feed on animals, right? It's human flesh that they seek. And the only way to kill them really is destroying their brain, right? So they're vulnerable to destruction of the brain. They're unaffected, though, by other injuries, right? Even normally fatal ones, as long as their brain isn't damaged. And key to a zombie usually is that they are contagious, right? So a person that is bitten by a zombie will become a zombie, right? We're assuming that the virus or infectious agent is then transferred, or the magic transfers, however this zombie arose. And as we know, they are extremely persistent, and they never stop looking for human flesh, right? All right, so here's some images of zombies, Call of Duty, some others from TV, right? You can see they're in the trance-like state. They're walking around aimlessly seeking to eat other humans and looking for human flesh. So do any infectious agents really have the ability to turn a human into a zombie? Currently, no. But what can known infectious agents do? Okay, because there are some aspects of this that could be caused by an infectious agent, okay? So I don't know of any infectious agent bringing anything back to life, all right? So I don't know of anything that can, cause a dead creature to reanimate and seek human flesh. However, we do know of infectious agents, and we've talked about these in this class, that can lead or cause behavioral control of the infected host. Toxoplasmosis, remember that this was a protist, Toxoplasmosis gondii. This was found pretty ubiquitously in cats, right? And it infects cats, and then you can have the cysts of this parasite shed in cat feces. And what happens is if you get rats or rabbits or some sort of herbivore coming along and munching on, the grass or whatever, clover that's got the cysts on it, they can ingest the cysts and become infected themselves. Now, once the rat is infected, it's really interesting because the rat's behavior will change, and it's thought to be through changing dopamine levels in the brain from the parasite. Anyway, the rats, which are usually very fearful of cats, right? They are now attracted to the scent and actually attracted to their predators. So that's really cool. We also know that humans that are infected with toxoplasmosis, they will have behavioral changes. There's some research anyway that suggests that, and it seems to affect men and women differently. It showed that men were more risk-taking and dogmatic, which means they are, sure that they are correct and right. And it made women, on the other hand, more warm and caring and loving. So interesting, I think. Cordyceps was another one that we talked about. This is a genus of fungus, and there's lots of different species, okay? But the Cordyceps genus in general, and the one we specifically looked at, causes ants to change their behavior. So it can infect ants, and it can cause them to, remember, they would leave their colony and rise above the colony to find a leaf. And this leaf would be at the right height and point in the forest for the sunlight, temperature, humidity to be perfect for the fungus to develop spores. And the ant would then crawl to the underside of the leaf at that point in the forest and engage in what we call the death grip, right? So it would bite on the underside of the leaf and lay there until it died. And the fungus would erupt stalk right out of the ant's body. And then at the end of that stalk would be this round structure that was full of spores. And the structure would open up and rain spores down over the top of the colony. So as the other ants are coming in and out, they would become infected as well. So we know that, at least with regards of these two, and maybe others, I mean, you might think of things like rabies. Rabies is a viral infection that changes behavior. We didn't cover that. There's also examples, syphilis. Syphilis is a bacterial infection that's known to lead to psychosis and mental disorders and things like that. So there's others that weren't covered. If you have one in your disease paper that you're writing about, you might want to talk about zombie formation and with that regards. But then there's a lot of diseases that don't do any of these things. Some diseases can also, lead to production of neurotoxins. We specifically talked about botulism and tetanus. Those are two different types of bacteria, Clostridium tetani for tetanus, and then Clostridium botulinum for botulism. Those bacteria produce toxins, and those toxins can bind to nerves, right? And we know that they can affect muscle contraction. So the tetanus toxin can cause muscles to contract, and the botulism toxin kind of acts the other way and causes muscles to become paralyzed, and they cannot contract. And so neurotoxins could cause movement. And you probably have seen, for example, or you might know that, animals, you can, after death, due to nerve stimulation, you can have movement for many hours. And so nerve stimulation can cause movement after death. And if exposure to neurotoxins could do that, it's possible to lead to movement after death, possibly. I've never seen that in any Clostridium, tetani cases or botulism cases. But it's not that far-fetched, right? I could see it happening possibly sometime. All right, let's watch a video too. This video kind of highlights some of these things that I just talked about. Let's see if this will work while I am screen recording. I'm not sure if it will. If it won't, you'll have to watch the video on your own, but it's very short.
Right. 1. Toxoplasma gondii. Toxoplasma gondii is a neat little brain parasite that primarily infects rats. Once infected, it manipulates the brain of the rat. Instead of being fearful of and running away from cats, the rat starts to seek out cats. Studies have shown that the Toxoplasma gondii infected rats are attracted to the smell of cats and cat urine. Infected rats like to approach cats and be killed or eaten by them. Then the parasite moves to the cat where it can breed. There have also been cases of Toxoplasma gondii infecting humans who presumably got it from their cats. So far, there haven't been any conclusive links between abnormal human behavior and Toxoplasma gondii carriers. Yet. By the way, more than 60 million people in the United States alone may be infected with the Toxoplasma parasite. Good luck sleeping. 2. Hymenopanesis argyrophaga. Afraid of wasps? Good. Now you're going to be terrified of them. The tropical wasp species, Hymenopanesis argyrophaga, is a parasite in the strongest sense of the word. These wasps target orb weaver spiders and use them as hosts for their young. When it comes time to lay their eggs, the female wasp will search for an orb weaver, sting it, which paralyzes the spider, and lay her eggs on the spider's abdomen. If that sounds bad, it gets worse. Not long after the eggs are laid, the larvae hatch and stay attached to the spider, sucking its blood. Several weeks of this and the larvae begin injecting an as-yet-known chemical into the spider. The chemical takes over the spider's brain and it begins weaving a cocoon for the larvae. Once the cocoon is finished, the brain-controlled spider just sits inside of it, waiting for the next phase of the larvae to molt. When the newly molted larvae arrive, they eat the spider and spend their next weeks in the cocoon. A few years later, the larvae become adult wasps and everything starts all over again. Yet another reason to carry bug spray all of the time. 3. Ophiocordyceps. Ophiocordyceps is a genus of parasitic fungus whose species attack different species of insects in the jungles of Africa. For ants, the spores of the fungus infect individuals and take over their brains. The fungus instructs the ant to climb up the stalk of a plant and attach itself to the underside of a leaf, about 25 centimeters above the ground. That's when the ant dies and the fungus begins to grow a stalk right out of the head of the dead ant. After a few days, when the stalk is fully grown, it unleashes more deadly spores and the process begins again. Could Ophiocordyceps fungus eventually evolve to infect humans? That's the plot of the post-apocalyptic video game, The Last of Us. So maybe. 4. Horsehair worms. Horsehair worms are horrifying parasites. Their eggs are laid in fresh water where they circulate looking for a host, usually an insect drinking water. Once they enter the host, they begin to mess with the brain. For several weeks, nothing out of the ordinary happens. Then, as the larvae develop and they are ready to hatch, they compel their host to put itself in danger out in the open. The goal is to have the host come across a body of water and drown. When the host is dead in the water, the mature worms emerge. Don't worry, horsehair worms mainly infect insects, but there have been documented human infections too. Oops. 5. Bath salts. We all remember the infamous Miami cannibal attack that happened back in 2012. A naked Rudy Eugene left viciously attacked 66-year-old homeless man Ronald Popo, then gnawed off his face in the process. It's believed that Eugene was under the influence of bath salts at the time of the attack. Popo barely survived the attack and is now completely blind. Sadly for us zombie apocalypse spectators, it's hard to tell if the bath salts made Eugene want to eat human flesh or if he was already mentally unstable. In either case, it's probably a good idea to stay away from bath salts and bath salt enthusiasts. While it's significantly more likely that the world will end in a mushroom cloud or a climate change-induced environmental disaster, you should never rule out a zombie apocalypse. After all, there are quite a few members of the animal kingdom that abuse the ability to zombify other creatures. Humans may be next. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please let me know by clicking the like button.
All right. So, in addition to what I mentioned, right, this video talked about the bath salts and horsehair worms, and then the wasp and the orb weaver spiders, but did not talk about neurotoxins. So the bath salts and horsehair worms and the orb weaver spiders were additional. Of course, bath salts are definitely not an example of an infectious disease. Maybe that's the magic, right? All right, so I do want, before I end the video, to mention to you again, the final exam will be on Canvas. It will be similar to exam 2. Here is the time frame for you to sit down and begin it. It will start on the 27th at 8 a.m. and go until the 30th. Please, you have 2 hours, but I want you to start by at least 8 p.m. on that day. If you wait till that last day, please start by at least 8 p.m. Because it's going to close out, and I want you to have plenty of time in case there's issues and you need to email me. No matter when you start, if there is any issue that happens whatsoever, please email me immediately. I will do my best to answer as soon as I can, and if I cannot answer right away, like if it's in some wee hour of the night or something, I'll answer it as soon as I can and when I get up in the morning. Between now and then, please email me any questions. Make sure you turn in your disease paper, your extra credit, and your clicker journal questions or entries. You can go to Canvas and go to the assignments, and in the upcoming assignments links, you'll find a link for each one of these. I want you all to know that I'm operating on a what I'm calling a no harm kind of philosophy for the portion of the course that was transitioned to online. So I'm going to try to let and this includes all the way back to exam 2 because that was online. It was after the transition. I'm going to let these things that have happened after the online portion kind of work to only help your grade, right? So if you've done an assignment, including the final, and you don't do that well, I'm not going to allow it to bring your grade down, okay? I will allow it to bring your grade up if you happen to do better, but I won't allow it to bring your grade down, all right? So we do have this no harm philosophy again, and so I want you all to do the best you can on the final exam, but please don't stress too much about it. Turn in your work, do the best you can, all right? It will affect your grade. It can bring your grade up dramatically, okay? And I know that's what most of you were counting on this last section of the course to do, is bring your grade up. So just do the best you can. Don't panic. Email me any and all questions. And I'm going to post the PowerPoint file that goes along with this video that I just made. And my video will stop at slide 9, but what I want you to know is that if you look at the PowerPoint, there's a lot of other slides here, and these are some possible final exam questions, all right? Chances are, so these are some review questions, and then I'm showing you the results because, you know, last time I taught this course, I actually asked the questions in person, and so I left in the results just so you could see what students are answering and what, you know, what might have tricked them and pulled them away from the right answer, for example. Like a lot of people said A here when the correct answer was all of the above. So you can see, okay, this is where they went wrong. So anyway, there's quite a few of those. It goes on and on. So take a look at those. Like I said, there will be a Zoom link for this day as well, and then I'll probably provide some Zoom links for the week, and sometimes you can Zoom in, or you can email me any question you have. All right.